Hello and welcome to my breakdown of the latest trailer. Some are saying final trailer, we'll see if that's true, for James Gunn's Superman. He's making some very interesting creative choices here, certainly strong ones. And while I might not agree with all of them, I think some of them are quite good. And others, the question is whether or not they're on character or not. And that's always a problem for DC because its characters are particularly not only well-defined, but there's fracture. It's the audience. We talked about this a lot. The audience is fractured. People have different ideas of what each character is supposed to be because they've been around for so long in so many iterations. But I do think of the big July movies, this one is, I think, most likely to do the best, particularly after that not so good Jurassic World Rebirth tracking just came online. So again, thank you for joining me. We're going to have a really great discussion about this. As always, I'm excited to hear your own thoughts and comments down below. And here we go. All right, so we start out, one of the things that I do like about this trailer quite a bit, and potentially about the film itself, is that James Gunn has certainly dreamed up a lot of jobs for Superman. You see these things happening, you're like, nobody else could really handle this but Superman. And I think, that'll be, the comics have struggled with that as well. They usually tend to go with letting him fight aliens. And to James Gunn's credit, while that certainly seems to be one of the options, it isn't what he's relied on exclusively. So I hope that building's been evacuated because, that looks real bad. I don't think Superman could solve that situation. And look at that. So this is very interesting to me. It's a small, but I think, it's small in terms of what people would pay attention to, but I think it has a big effect on the film itself. Typically, Superman has always been portrayed as having a 1940s or 50s idyllic aspirational quality to his world, right? Downtown Metropolis, everyone wearing a smart suit, etc. And this, everybody's still neat and pretty for the show, to borrow a term from Mickey Mouse Club. But I think it's a more accessible approach. From the style of the clothing to the patterns of the fabric. It's more leaned back, instead of leaned forward, I think, in terms of the clothing choices. And there's a crazy pattern coming up that I can't believe made it into this movie. And it is an interesting color palette. Yellow is typically, that's one of the reasons they didn't give Wolverine a yellow suit for so long. That yellow is not this is a mustard yellow. Not always the best color on screen, but of course, it does reflect. Superman's costume is red, yellow, and blue. But mustard yellow and navy blue. It's a very different color scheme that we're used to seeing in films, and it definitely gives the film a unique look. So they're trying to outrun that building. But I do like the Domino Building idea. I think for Superman, that's a great idea. Kudos to that architect as that building is not crumbling. I almost feel like I would love that to be a Wayne building. Bruce Wayne's like, but he obviously can't be in this movie. But if it was a Wayne Tech building. But all the other buildings have crumbled. But this one, maybe because it hasn't, you would think it would still crumble from the impact. But it's a great Superman image. And it's not something we haven't seen too much before. They've always done Superman stopping a runaway train. Even Spider-Man's done that at this point. But this is something a little bit unique and different. So now here it is. Here it is. Look, that's like such a Fabrics R Us pattern. And it has a coziness to it for that regard. When I was growing up, my mother actually sewed us play clothing, Mary Poppins style. We had play clothes, and they were made out of some wonderful, wonderful patterns. But it's so unusual to see that in a movie. I can't decide if it's a good idea or not. We'll find out. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. So look at him. I like that he's hovering. You'd think his feet would be on the ground, but I guess that certainly is it's a weirder thing to see out your window, and it really emphasizes the cape. But you know what else I was surprised about? The haircut. I didn't know he had almost like a faux hawk. Maybe that's because he's got that broccoli look when he's Clark Kent. But, it didn't occur to me that when he slicked it back to be Superman, that the sides would be so closely cut and that he would have not only the curl in the front, but that little duck tail flip in the back. It's again, this is a very modern, grounded approach to the character who has always been, again, more idyllic and aspirational. So we'll see how audiences respond to it. So Lex Luthor, by the way, has a voiceover over this whole opening sequence. And I don't like the tonal quality of Nicholas Hoult's voice for Lex. I'm feeling he's very Jesse Eisenberg, although Smallville fans are saying he's very Michael Rosenbaum. Thank you very much. But I still feel he's too young for Lex. I'll talk about it when we see a picture of Lex. But, here's Superman in all his dusty glory. I guess some of those buildings did go down. But again, apparently, hopefully they were evacuated, or I don't think this moment would be playing the way that it is. And the sunlight looks nice and everything. And I think it's an interesting choice to have him still so small amongst everything. So here's Lex, baby. By the way, kudos to the actress playing Miss Tessmacher. Her ability to steal focus in a comedic fashion while still being very hot. It's hard to be hot and comedic. Those two things usually don't go together. Candice Bergen is a good example of someone who was able to do both back in the day with Murphy Brown. But usually you're one or the other. Usually you're the eye candy or you're the comedic relief. So kudos, and to James Gunn's credit, he wrote the role that way and directed it that way. But I really am impressed with Miss Tessmacher. I mean, look, you got Lex Luthor, Ultraman, the engineer in this shot, and who are we paying attention to? The Snow Bunny. So I think that's great. It is interesting she chose to dress differently from the rest of the group. She knows how to stand out and how to dress for the occasion. So they've accessed the Fortress of Solitude. I'll be curious to see how they do that. We've seen that before. This, I can get the idea that he's unfazed by what's going on around him. But the problem is that it's so CGI that I'm unfazed. I'm like, I know that's not going to hit you because the VFX team was told not to let it hit you. I mean, the fact that he doesn't even flinch with the fire, that seems a little bit too much to me. I guess that's part of also why it just doesn't ring true to me. I think he's poorly cast as Lex, I'm sorry to say. And I really liked him on The Great, which I believe is the role that got him this one. He's very good on that show. So he's, saying he's going to take Superman down and he's going to kill everybody he knows. And this was confusing to me. He said, including that reporter you're always talking to. And I was like, which one is it? Because isn't he supposed to always give exclusives to Clark Kent, just the way Peter Parker always gets Spider-Man photos? But I guess he's talking about Lois, and he doesn't know they're a thing. And then he's like, who raised you? Someone must have raised you. I'm going to get them too. My pretty? Why doesn't he give that guy pants? Superman has an extra pair of underwear on the outside. I feel bad for that poor alien there who very much, seems like he could use some pants. I'll be curious to see what's going on with Lex Luthor's prison where he has Superman and apparently a number of other things held captive. But what's, I think, the most interesting thing to me about this version of Lex? He really seems to feel that if Superman weren't there, he'd be sitting pretty. There'd be no problems. But I don't agree with the way this character is portrayed here. Lex would always have a problem with someone. And maybe, to be fair, that's going to be James Gunn's point. But this Lex just isn't cool enough or charismatic enough or anything enough to really be top dog. And maybe that's the point. Maybe he's a very petty man because of it. But getting rid of Superman, I don't think is going to solve any of his problems. And the more I say it, the more I think that might indeed be James Gunn's point. When James Gunn doesn't get lost in his infantile, juvenile, crude humor, he has some beautiful and really deep observations about, not from just a story perspective, but a human perspective as well. It was one of the best things about Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So we've seen some of this. There's some more new stuff as we get a little bit further along. There he is. There's a few women working here, but there's another shot here that I think is even more interesting. But this is Lex Luther Kors from Smallville. I always go with Lex Corps, but this is Luther Kors mission control. But Superman's all by himself. Or is he? He has the Justice League International. And these robots, which are 2 CGI. So now we're going to get to some new stuff. So there's a different journalist on the screen. I prefer it when it's Christopher Reeve's son. I don't understand this design on the Kaiju. I mean, I love that Superman's fighting a Kaiju, and I think it's a great idea. but this is just so for children. The trailer overall at some points really does seem like, hey, chum, and I guess it's nodding back to the early days of DC Comics when it was very much that kind of a brand, when comic books in general kind of were like that. It's weird. They were very much, I guess maybe they are a little bit like James Gunn. They're outwardly coded for kids, but yet they have some subtext that's very adult. That's interesting. But I just really, I hate the design on this kaiju. I feel that it takes me out of the movie. You're just like, why does it look like that? It looks like a cartoon. And I don't like it. I'm curious about this big belly burger though. That seems like horrible marketing. I will say that James Gunn seems to be doing some very interesting things with camera work. When I saw, speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, a movie I liked very much, I thought the Adam Warlock flying sequences were excellent. And I said, is this what we have to expect for Superman down the line? And I do believe that James Gunn was, testing some things out there, which he's taken even further here. Again, I do wonder if the visuals, the cinematographer is going to undo this movie like he did The Flash. I think the movie's a little too sharp. I think I think that hurts to make the VFX not blend as well. I think it's hard to make the VFX bring them up to that level. But from a camera work position, even though this is also a fisheye lens, I still think, especially from far away, it looks good. I mean, the fact that you're able to do this kind of flying. One of the best things about Bryan Singer's Man of Steel was the flying sequences. Those were also surprisingly, I think, as technology and VFX improve, Superman's flying sequences only get better. He's doing some fancy moves. So this guy's going for his innocence. And this is, right over this line, actually, right back here. This is where, because he says something different in the trailer, but they have a voiceover now in this trailer where he says, no matter what you do to me, Luthor, your plans won't work. And the line and the delivery is, again, very, old Chum. It's a very childlike, for kids kind of dated approach, which I find an interesting stylistic approach. But visually, this is actually one of my favorite shots with him in the fire. I think the color looks great. This is really great. I mean, there really is some interesting things being done about putting you in the middle of the action. So he says, wrap it up. I guess maybe Superman's coming. He's like, I love it when Superman visits Lex's office. So he's like, wrap it up. So this, again, and, I'm curious to see what leads to this sequence where it seems to be the same guy who was taking out the office building. And you can see there's some Superman-sized holes in the ceiling. That could be really cool. But there's a really fantastic blast there and the camera goes with it. Now, something that they revealed with these new latest trailers and spots is that Superman's eyes are damaged. Now, I guess maybe he went a little overboard on the heat vision, or maybe someone's found a way to take out his heat vision. But I think it's I'm not quite sure how I feel about the result. One thing is it creates like a domino mask for him, and it almost makes him look like an old school burglar, in some of the things that he's doing. Superman doesn't wear a mask because he has so much integrity and is willing to put himself on the line. So for him to almost seem like he's kind of hiding his identity, even accidentally here, is weird to see. I think, something about it just feels off. I am curious to see what happened here. And it's weird that he seems to be having this eye injury for so much of the film, because you're going to see it in a lot of the following shots. But I don't know how, I would rather that something was wrong with his pupils than creating the mask around his eyes. Again, it really does. I don't think it works for him. But I am intrigued as to what the reasoning is. So this is the big controversial shot that I've been having a spirited discussion with so many of you. I wish it were more of a discussion on social media. So I said that I didn't feel that Superman would knock someone's teeth out. Especially as, so let me just explain my position here where I have a little more leeway and nuance, unlike I have on social media. So I think that the way, it's James Gunn. So this is played for cutesy comedic effect. Krypto rips off this guy's helmet. Then Superman, it's a 1-2 punch, first from the dog, the second from the owner. And Superman knocks out some of his teeth. I don't like the look on Superman's face. I don't like that he did this to a lackey, a henchman. You can see the Luther Kors logo on the outfit. Superman might because by the way, I never had an issue with Superman punching someone. It's the teeth being knocked out that I had a problem with. I just think that's too violent, too aggressive, and beneath Superman, to be honest with you. I mean, that's not even something I don't think, well, older Batman would, like Frank Miller's Batman would knock out teeth. But I just don't know how I feel about glorifying that. I think that Superman, whenever he does use violence, it's always as a last resort. And he's always absolutely horrified and furious that he was pushed to that level, to that space, to having to act that way. And I don't think he would ever do it to a lackey, because he would feel that person was misguided and just didn't know any better. And he would try to, and then of course, so I don't like and also I think, as I said, the bandit Domino mask, I think adds a weird layer to it as well. Like you're like, Superman doesn't look right. He's not acting quite right. And then of course, the teeth ricochet off the camera, and there's even a sound effect. We'll see if this is a camera within the film or it's just the movie camera. And again, I think that, some people have brought up this panel from All-Star Superman. Grant Morrison takes a lot of risks. I think Grant Morrison is a dangerous person to base your adaptation off of, personally. Even X-Men, and I loved Grant Morrison's X-Men the most. But I think Grant Morrison always starts out really strongly. But then, Grant Morrison is behind this kind of a shot, as obviously we're seeing. He's behind the robots in the Fortress of Solitude. And I personally don't love these choices because I also didn't like Grant Morrison's take on the character. But when Superman punches Lex Luthor in this shot, first of all, he doesn't knock his teeth out. The reason there's no blood here is because I think they don't want an R rating. And I think if there was blood, they'd have to have an R rating. I think that's the reason that's why it is this way here. But I think that this is meant to show in the comic book that Superman has just reached a breaking point with Lex Luthor. They've been going at it for decades. He doesn't even know this guy's name, I'm sure. He's just a grunt, again, for Luther Kors. So when Superman finally I think Superman in the comic book panel, his action means he just feels there's nothing else to say to Lex at this point. Although when he does punch him out, he says, you could have saved the world years ago if it mattered to you, Luthor. And I think that anger is evidenced in Superman's punch, that he there's nowhere else to go in his fight with Luthor, and he's just disgusted with him. And I think, so that's why that works. And this is a comedic aside with a character that means nothing, doesn't work. And by the way, I do not condone the snapping of Zod's neck in Man of Steel either. But at least that moment is more like the one that Grant Morrison put together. This is too flippant, too comedic. But maybe Superman's been pushed too far. We've all been there on Twitter. Because not only does he knock this guy's teeth out, but then he grabs him and takes him towards what looks like a whole lot of other lunkies. And we're going to see the culmination in just a moment with the laser turn. And we'll talk about that then. Supermodel turn. All right, so now again, that looks like a job for Superman. I mean, someone has split Metropolis in half. That is pretty substantial. And so I'm very curious to see what's going on here as well. It's going right towards the water, man. Now, here he goes. You're going to do something, Big Blue? And obviously, Green Lantern has already deployed his abilities because they're awash in green. We'll see how Nathan Fillion's character goes. I go back and forth on him, We'll see. It's not the Green Lantern I would have started with, but I feel nice that the Lanterns show is currently filming. I'm really excited about that. So here we are at the Metropolis Lord Tech Field, James Gunn's brother. Sean Gunn will be playing that character. It's the Metropolis Meteors. That's a great name. It really sounds like, you feel like a sportscaster just saying it. It's a beautiful day in Lord Tech Field, and we're here to root for the Metropolis Meteors. But today we're rooting for Superman. It's a home game, and Ultraman is challenging him. I actually like that a lot. I wonder if I couldn't find a character named Weber. So I wonder where that's coming from. Luckily, again, this is also evacuated. Metropolis, they're real good at evacuating stuff. Had a lot of practice. The CGI, again, I think it's, look at that. That looks so CGI. But and although of course it's not meant to be watched frame by frame like this, but I do again blame the cinematography. It's just too clear I think it makes things too difficult for the VFX team. So Ultraman, they're fighting it up. Everybody. Oh, so look at the T-spheres. The T-spheres. You know, even the T-spheres wear underwear on the outside in James Gunn's Superman, and it looks like they've chosen to go with a thong. I'm excited to see Mr. Terrific in action. I still feel that this character is getting supporting character energy when he has the potential to be a lead. I mean, I just wouldn't put anyone in a chair like that. I don't know why he would fly around sitting down, right? You know, like we've been talking about Steven Seagal infamously doing that, and Keanu Reeves maybe not being able to do any more John Wick because of his knees. But this is a character being introduced, and I don't know why he can't fly through the field standing. I just think it would be a better look for the character. And the T-spheres do look a little, I'm not sure. I mean, I think technologically they make sense. You know, they have lots of cameras and they can shoot a laser from anywhere. But they look like wiffle balls. I don't love the design. What in the Grant Morrison is this? Somebody, yes, has definitely read All-Star Superman. But again, that is a very specific take on the character and a very limited take on the character, and certainly not a take that is responsible for the character's popularity. All-Star Superman might be highly regarded, but that approach is not why the character has been a household name for decades. I'm wondering who that character is on the far right. Brainiac? One can hope. But who's this green baby? Our choices are a baby Brainiac, Martian Manhunter, great new comic right now, or maybe just some rando green baby. We'll find out. I'm curious about those blocks too. Is this a Minecraft? Minecraft is also a Warner Brothers movie. Are we going to get a crossover here? I really do wonder what's happening in this sequence. All right, so this to me is crazy. I agree. I don't know how I feel about Lois driving this ship. But, you know, I think it's interesting that the Daily Planet is taking this story on the road. And I do find it very charming that Skylar Gazondo's Jimmy Olsen is trying to work as they take off. I think that perfectly captures the reporter feel, you know, and the way reporters, you know, conduct themselves. They've got their story vision board in the ship as well. I think it's great. I mean, I don't know how I feel about Lois being able to fly this. I wish that somebody, a superhero, was assisting them. That might make it slightly more believable. But to me, I just love that Jimmy Olsen. He's trying to work. You know, he's not even phased. I think that's great. So I guess they're gonna go up and see maybe they're gonna go to the story if it's up in the sky. So here, there seems to be maybe the giant split in Metropolis, and he's taking on that guy again. I wonder why it looks like it does down there. Is that the dirt? But it almost looks like there's alien tech as well. I'm curious what's buried beneath Metropolis. Maybe there's a lot of weird stuff that we're looking at. And we all thought maybe it was the Phantom Zone. Maybe it is the Phantom Zone down there. You got a real problem, Metropolis. That'd be great if you had in Ghostbusters and stuff, they have the Con Ed guy being like, you got a real problem down here. You know, if some tech guy was like, I think there might be a Phantom Zone down here. The negative zone. That's Marvel's version of the Phantom Zone. They're even both called zones. So we've seen this before. These rebels, they choose Superman. And Lex ain't too happy about it. He says they chose him, let them die. And this reminds me very much of Elon Musk, you know, and his SpaceX control center, right? Surrounded mostly by tech bros. And even they're not so sure if maybe this guy knows what he's doing. I love the look being exchanged by those two guys on the left. And I wonder who this guy in the front is. He looks interesting. Maybe he's zany enough to stand up to Lex. But I'll be very curious, you know, to see what's happening here. So, but Superman, if you like him or you don't like him, he'll still protect you. I don't know how I feel about this exchange. So he's taking a breather, and, you know, Mr. Terrific says, stop messing around. Again, very comedic supporting character approach to the character rather than main character energy. And he says, I'm not playing around. I'm doing important stuff. And that's very James Gunn. Some of you have said it's very Star-Lord, and I agree with that. But, you know, Superman, I don't know. You know, like Superman has always had like a nobility to him. You know, But I don't know. I was going to say Jimmy Stewart, but I could see Jimmy Stewart saying this. I have to see it in the context of the film. And I think there's no arguing for public opinion. I think that no matter how I might feel about it, if it does well at the box office and the consensus is that it's great, which we'll determine by the box office, well, then this was a good change for the character. Oh, but you can see also behind there's some kind of portal. I wonder where that's leading to. So here we go. There's a close-up on the logo. It looks like he's wearing a sweater, man. That's quite the knit. And he takes these people out with so there's been some debate over this. First of all, he doesn't look like he's killing anyone to me. This looks, I don't know about how I feel about Crypto being in this fight. Crypto seems more like he's a liability and, something that Superman has to be worried about. I'd be like, oh, thanks. It's okay, Crypto. Fetch in this other area. And I don't know. His helping doesn't seem cute to me. But he's not killing any of these people. I think he's just disabling them, And again, maybe they push Superman too far. Maybe he's had enough. I think it's fine. I think that Superman, again, it's a younger Superman. In my opinion, I forgot to mention this. When I was talking about the teeth, some people said it was very injustice-y. And I agree with that. And I think the injustice action sequences, the takedowns are amazing. They're phenomenal. I think it's a great idea to bring that into the movies and TV space. But I'd like to point out to you that Injustice, in order to get away with what they do, had to make their Superman evil to get away with that. I don't know what Superman's, I forget what the term is, when you see their moves at the end. I don't know what his would look like if it was regular Superman. I think it would, not be like this. But maybe I don't know. I think there's something about, I would have preferred if it didn't stay eye level. I would have preferred if it went up and down as he turned around. Maybe I would have been more impressed if he just was like turning up, not just around, but up and down. And it became almost like, but I guess then maybe he'd have to be worried about everybody on the ground. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. I think it's different. It's certainly different. And let's see how audiences react to it. But it's to me, this isn't as cool as Batman coming out of the Batmobile after the car chase upside down, viewed upside down because Penguin was turned upside down. That to me was like incredible. But I'm more of a Batman fan than a Superman fan. So if you're more of a Superman fan than a Batman fan, does this give you the same giddy feel? But hold on, there's one more thing. So here he does the eyes up here. And we see it in IMAX, which I'm sure you probably should. But yeah, I gotta agree. That, I can't believe anybody approved that. You would think when they were testing it, they'd be like, I'm glad no one's ever gonna see this. But instead they put it up there as a big finish. I just think that looks crazy bad. I don't understand why it just looks so bad. It looks cartoonish. Maybe, again, I do feel like maybe they feel they can get kids into this. And, like some action figures for small kids, they enlarge the fists. And so that's kind of what they're doing here, I guess. But I think it looks weird. And boy, he seems to be hitting some tremendous resistance. I'll be curious to see what's happening here. And there they say, okay, tickets on sale. So did it work? Did you buy your tickets? How many times did you buy? How many times are you planning on going so far? And did you get premium screens? Some of these are going to be in 3D. What was your choice? Or if you're waiting, what are you waiting for? Thank you for going over this with me. Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.